Home is where the mud is. Welcome to my second video. I'm making these videos to change the way you think because almost everything you have been taught was designed to program you to stop thinking critically and accept everything you are told as truth without question. I know, it's deep, right? When I started writing my thoughts down in the form of scripts for these videos, I let them flow out of my subconscious mind as they chose to present themselves to me. I actually wrote about 15 scripts before recording my first video, and since starting writing them 2 weeks ago, some of my assumptions have been proven to be far more accurate than even I had hoped for, with supporting evidence being revealed to the public. But then I realized that if I presented them in the order my subconscious mind had given them to me, you might not be following them as well as you could have. So I've rearranged them and rewritten them, and here goes. Oh yeah, and since recording my first video, I went back and did an intro to the subject, and I also did a short video explaining photography and time and early photography, and well, go and have a look. So my first main video was about Berwick-upon-Tweed and StarForts, and this, I guess, is now the prequel to that story, but I'll also show you where my own thinking let me down in pursuing this subject sooner. The subject of StarForts, bastion forts or citadels, is a story almost as old as time, but will open your eyes to what your future holds, and so it becomes all-encompassing to the world we all live and share today. I believe there are many thousands of StarForts in Great Britain and even more worldwide, but you have been trained to ignore them, not recognise them for what they are, or as I will demonstrate later, they have been removed from our common knowledge, history and landscape. This deception is still being performed today and upheld by those that control the knowledge and the teaching. I hope that these videos will unravel the mysteries lost to time. But now, back to the mud. Prior to going to Berwick-upon-Tweed, I was forwarded a video about Great Yarmouth Cathy and how she discovered a cellar in a house. This was done after the house had been purchased as a two-storey house with no cellar being recorded, not even in the title deeds. So, in our home, there is what is usually described as a keep cellar, a coal cellar, or a half cellar. These cellars are common in the style and age of the property and generally consists of a low ceiling room under the front room of the property, and ours had a coal chute too. Nothing out of the ordinary so far. The property had signs of additions and alterations that is also to be expected in a property of this age, but something wasn't quite right. As with many properties of this age, the ceilings are quite high, about 10'6", which is 3.2 metres, on the ground floor, but upstairs they're 12 foot, which is 3 metres 65. It's unusual to have higher ceilings on the first floor than on the ground floor. In fact, I would say it's not only unusual, but it's unheard of unless alterations have been made. But why would anyone do that? There were also signs that a turn in the stairs had been removed, but it still didn't click. There was a double supporting beam for the beams of the front ground floor room. Again, this at first would not seem unusual if there had been rot at the edge of the beams touching the front elevation. This might have also explained the inch fall in the floor from the back wall to the front elevation wall. Yeah, it sloped, lost an inch front to back, back to front. There were also signs of beams for a suspended floor in the back ground floor room, which now had a concrete floor. Again, not unusual until you look at where the beam holes were. They're about 18 inches, which is 45 centimetres, below the current floor level of the back room. These appeared in the cellar wall that's underneath the front room. It was also on the cellar wall a different colour above these beam holes than it was below the beam holes. Again, I ignored it. I just thought there'd been a shelf there and they'd painted it a different colour above the shelf. I didn't even spot, well, I did spot, that I actually explained the loss of steps in the turn of the stairs that went from upstairs down into the back room. Of course, would have ended 18 inches, 45 centimetres lower than where they do now, but still didn't click. At the rear of the property, there is a two-storey extension with a kitchen downstairs and a bathroom upstairs. The room height in the extension is more in keeping with a person of around 6 foot 187 centimetres. And yeah, this meant we had an 8-inch step, 20 centimetre step down into the bathroom from the turn in the stairs at the top of the stairs. So in my head, it's just some dodgy renovations over the years, and I chose to ignore them all. I now regret not thinking about them more before turning the cellar into a cinema room. So what does all this tell us? Well, working back up through the list that I've just given you, the kitchen and bedroom extensions, kitchen and bathroom extensions have all been added to all the houses in all the rows. These were in keeping with the average height of an inhabitant. That may sound daft, but bear with me. The floor in the back room has been raised 18 inches or 45 centimetres, and the turn in the stair has been lost. The change of colour on the wall in the cellar also indicates that the front room floor has been raised. The rotten or ill-fitting beams in the front room in the bay window are probably just as a result of the bay window being added after and not being fit very well and not very watertight. Once again, this has been done to every house on this street, and it becomes obvious that it's an addition to every house. Okay, you might not like this one, but the ceilings indicate that the houses were originally built for somebody much taller, around 9 foot or 2 meters 75 approximately. With that size of person living in the house probably had a bigger footprint, i.e. it started as a bigger house and it's been split into 2 or even 3. And there is evidence of taller people living locally. In the local village of Hale, there is a statue to the child of Hale. He stood 9 foot 3 inches tall, 2.8 meters. So this causes some problems, especially if the floor was 18 inches lower, as that would put the opening of the front door and the back door about 18 inches, which is 45 centimeters, lower than ground level to both the front and the back of the house. So this might be an indication of a mud flood, Now, if you've not heard of mud floods, don't panic. I will explain them later in this series. But there is evidence of mud floods worldwide. But now, introducing the mud flood brings a further complication on the house. Remember the turn in the stairs? It's being adjusted after a mud flood. This means that the house was converted for a 9-foot tall person to a 6-foot tall person prior to the mud floods, and then they had to adjust again. There are 0 historical records of such events in any English history. You might think that it's just from an ordinary flood, but the evidence is shown that this happens on higher ground as well as down in the valley bottoms. So I'm going to stick with mud floods. Besides, I don't think there was ever a recorded event of such an horrendous flood that's added 45 centimetres, a foot and a half to the ground level of everywhere. And for those not familiar with it, the suggestion of the average depth of mud floods worldwide is around about 18 foot or 5.5 metres. So, if this is all correct, that means the height of the ceiling in the cellar was a foot and a half lower, which takes us almost to crawl height to get the coal in and out, which doesn't seem right, does it? So if the floor was lower, then that makes the floor of the room below the front room in the cellar should be 8 foot below, that's 2.4 meters lower than the current floor level, assuming a 12 foot or 365 centimeters high room, although it could possibly be around 15 foot room, which is 4.57, which again takes us again deeper. And the reason why I say 15 foot or 4.57 meters on a ground floor room, you generally would have a slightly higher ceiling than you would on the first and second floor. So in summary, this house was built for a 9 foot, 2.75 meters tall person, along with every other house in the 10 rows of houses in my immediate vicinity. These houses have been altered to accommodate 6 foot tall, 1.87 meters, I think, off the top of my head, tall people. These people were possibly working for the taller people, or the taller people had disappeared. But at some point, somebody has requisitioned the house, refit it out, and then the mud came along, and they've had to do it again, a second alteration. At which point they've added a bay window at the front and an extension at the rear. And all of this took place within a lost StarFort. But none of this is in our recorded or taught history. But the event is as plain as the nose on your face if you choose to open your eyes and think critically. Has the penny dropped? Probably not fully just yet. So let me show you what's right outside my front door. Hold your breath. We're going deeper in my next video. In the meantime, question everything.